My name is Lauren Tepfer and I'm 18 years old. I live in a small New Jersey suburb. My area code is 856. Growing up, I've always felt a really strong connection with my surroundings and special places from my childhood. And I don't know why. There's not a lot of significant memories in these specific places that I hold so dearly, but it's just like being around them all the time when I was younger and visiting them now. It reminds me of my childhood. When I was in middle school, I kind of realized that I wasn't like the rest of the people I went to school with. And that sounds so dramatic, but I realized that I didn't really like where I was. I was more interested in creative things. When I was in 8th grade, my freshman and sophomore year of high school, I spent a lot of time actively hating the suburbs and wishing I could just move to the city and that my life wouldn't start until I was there. It took me a long time to break that mindset and kind of appreciate where I was. Although I never really felt like high school was the peak of my life, I do owe a lot of my inspiration and credibility to high school, and not to the concept of high school itself, but more of just the person I've become throughout these 4 years. As I grew older in my junior year and that summer, I kind of realized that I found beauty in other things, like the small town that I live in, and the places that I'm around every day that I never really looked at in a way other than negative. These places all of a sudden felt so real, cinematic, and important, and I wanted to be able to capture these surroundings that meant something to me in a way that represented the way I truly feel about them. I really started to pay attention to the people around me that I tried to ignore for so many years, and the spaces around me that I hated and didn't feel were significant. And through observing them in a different way, I opened my eyes to this brand new concept of making things beautiful, even if you in the past have never felt like they were significant. The reason I wanted to do this project and the reason this whole concept means so much to me is because I've grown to love where I live, and I really love the whole atmosphere and inspiration it provides me daily. For this project, I visited a few places that were pivotal in my childhood and in my adolescence, and captured the things and places that meant a lot to me. I was really excited to visit these places with a whole new perspective in mind. A lot of the places I visited were places I hadn't visited in years, which was very exciting and scary and nostalgic. I'm moving to the city in the fall for college, and it's going to be a big test of artistic truth and artistic honesty to see how my work will evolve. I hope this project is portrayed as honestly as I want it to be. These are my 856 growing pains. When I was born, I lived in a small house on Narberth Avenue in Haddon Heights. I lived there until I was 5. That house, as much as I don't really remember that much from it, is a prominent space and visual in my head because I pass by it all the time. It's a very nostalgic street. Just driving up and down that street is very fun and interesting as an 18-year-old. Across the street from that house is my Aunt Sue's house. She's not really my aunt. She's one of those people who is very close and you just call them your relative even though they aren't. Those are the best relationships to have. My Aunt Sue lived across the street, and she was a big role model and mentor in my brother and I's life as we were growing up. We spent a lot of time over there while our parents were working, and since she was just across the street, we always had somewhere to go. My childhood best friend, Rebecca, lives just down the street. Becca and I met in preschool, and then we went to kindergarten together. And even when I moved away after kindergarten, we were still very close friends all throughout elementary school. Becca has always been somebody constant in my life, which is really awesome because it's a pretty rare instance that someone is always there. Becca and her whole family have always been a part of our lives. She moved to a different high school after middle school, and we kind of went different ways, but we still keep in touch, which is amazing. When I was around 5 years old, we moved to Cherry Hill, New Jersey, which is about 15 minutes from Haddon Heights. That house and Cherry Hill itself holds such a strong memory in my head and who I am, which is weird because we only lived there for about 3 years. I moved back in the middle of 3rd grade. I've always visualized Cherry Hill as this pivotal part in my childhood, which is really strange because we were only there for 3 years. It was when I was really young. All of the places there have such a burnt-in visual image in my brain, which I feel will never erase. Cherry Hill isn't that far from where I live now, so even when we drive past there, it's very like, oh, this is the grocery store that we went to, and oh, can we drive into the old development so I can see the house? My mom is always like, why do you want to see it? And I'm just like, I don't know, I love it. It just holds such a weird place in my memory and in my heart because there's no really specific or significant memories I have in Cherry Hill other than the fact that I was a 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grader there. In the summers of my years in Cherry Hill, my brother and I attended a day camp called Tall Pines. I revisited there for this project, and this place was one of the ones I was most excited for because I hadn't been there in so long. Tall Pines has such a distinct memory in my head. The whole scenery and surroundings of the whole day camp was just very significant, and I think about it all the time. I went there for 2 years as a 1st through 3rd grader. I loved it. I got to do cooking and dancing and arts and crafts, and I played tennis there and went to gymnastics, and it was just really fun the way I remember it. That's something I really loved growing up. After my 3 years in Cherry Hill, my mom, my brother, and I moved back to Haddon Heights, and we moved into a little house on Sycamore Street, which is about 5 minutes away from our old house on Narberth Avenue. We currently live on Sycamore, and I love the house we're in. This is the house where I've grown up the most because I've experienced everything here. All the moments that were so specific and traumatic in the best way. I'm going to be really sad to leave this house when I move to New York in the fall. Haddon Heights is such a small town, and everybody kind of knows everybody, which can be a really good or a really bad thing. I really hated it when I was younger, but as I've grown older, I've come to love the fact that it's so small because it feels so intimate and scary in such a good way. I don't know if I'd ever live in a town like this when I'm older because I feel like it's just not something I choose for myself, but I'm not unhappy with it as where I am right now. When I moved back to Haddon Heights, I went to 7th Avenue for 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. 7th Avenue was so much fun. I loved it. I visited there for this project, and it was my first time being there in a long time. It's weird because you revisit these places and you're like, they were so big! It's so weird because it seemed so massive and daunting when I was younger, and now it's just like, oh, this is just a school. My elementary school summers were spent at the swim club in my town, Haddon Glen. I grew up swimming there with all my friends, and there's so many good memories held in that little space. I work there now as a lifeguard, and I love being able to go back and revisit as a teenager. After elementary school, I went to Haddon Heights Middle School, which is attached to the high school. Middle school was weird. I wasn't really sure of myself. I don't think anyone is sure of themselves in middle school. It's just a confusing and stressful time in your life. You enter middle school and you're like, uh-oh, what's gonna happen to me now? Because you just don't know. You can change or you won't change. I went into middle school and didn't really have a solid group of friends. I wandered from friend group to friend group, and I wasn't really sure who I wanted to be and where I wanted to be, and I think middle school is a really good telling of the person I was becoming. After 8th grade, I entered high school. High school and middle school were in the same building, so I didn't have to move anywhere, and I was still going to school with all the same people, except for the few that went to different high schools. I entered high school with this whatever happens, happens mindset. At the end of our freshman year, one of our assignments was to write a letter to our senior self. I got mine this year because I'm graduating, and it's funny because when I got it, I remembered writing all of it. It really wasn't that long ago, it just feels like it. In my letter to my senior self, I wrote, I hope high school wasn't as bad as you thought it would be. I'm sitting here now, about to graduate high school in 3 days, and I can confidently say it wasn't as awful and traumatic as I thought it was going to be. There were definitely a lot of things that could have gone differently. I didn't really wear the high school badge well, but I think I did well with what I had. Throughout high school, I kind of realized where I want to be doesn't have to be where I am right now. I realized throughout high school that everybody you go to school with aren't all the people there are in the world. I made a lot of friends outside of school and my town who live in different places. High school was not very good. I'm saying that while using air quotes. High school was as good as it should have been. I think I did my best. As much as I'm nostalgic about it, I am very, very, very ready to move on. My time as a suburban teenager are coming to an end, and I'm painfully happy about it. I have so much more in the world waiting for me, so much growing to do and ideas to execute. I'm moving to New York this August, and I really can't wait to be in a new place. I think my 856 growing pains will always be a memory no matter where I go. It's time.